First off, I just want to say welcome. I know that for those who were just here for the last panel discussion with Reverend Sharpton, he has some amazing insights, and I think we have something that we can build off of as we talk about authenticity in this changing media landscape. And so I am Salim Holder. I am the founder of the New Trade program, which is really focused on helping individuals learn skills in technology, AI, cybersecurity, digital marketing without a degree. We help people get experience and we help connect them with jobs. So as we talk today, we are talking, as I mentioned, about the changing media landscape. And the reality is, as we all know and see and live every day, there's a lot of things that are changing in the world right now, specifically in the US. There's a lot of things that are changing. The media landscape is changing. Consumers demand more than just polished campaigns. Consumers are looking for connectivity. Consumers are looking for authenticity, and they're looking for accountability. And so that means for brands, it's no more just performative measures of, hey, it's Black History Month, here's a flag. For brands now, we have to connect authentically. And so I'm excited today to spark this conversation. There's a few different topics that we're going to talk about: the role of media in shaping perceptions. We're going to talk about purposeful messaging, collaboration versus appropriation. We're going to talk about meeting the moment with integrity. But I think I will go back to one thing that Peter said at the beginning of this, is that we really want to drive action, not just the conversation. We want to leave here with action. And so when we think about who's in the room right now, we have entrepreneurs, we have business owners, we have business leaders, we have influencers that are in the room. So as we talk, we want to make sure that we talk in a way that can connect to how you can actually take action on the conversation. And so before I jump into the conversation, I'd like to give a chance for everybody to introduce themselves and say a little about who they are. We have some phenomenal panelists here with us. So I'll just start right here to my right.
Thank you. Yep. Hi, everyone. My name is Karel Cooper, Chief Marketing Officer at GumGum. We are a contextual advertising platform helping brands connect with consumers digitally when we feel consumers are in the right mindset. So it's all about context and mindset for us. I've been in MarTech and AdTech for about 26 years or now so, and excited for this conversation today.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kristen Roshan with NBC Universal, Director of National Partnerships. Been in media for a little bit over 25 years, working with iHeartMedia, Odyssey here in New York, and just really excited about this conversation.
Hello, hello. My name's Ivan Heredia. Good afternoon. I am a former Chief Marketing Officer for National 4-H Council, which is a wonderful youth development organization. I spent 25 years in media and entertainment, from Paramount to Disney to Warner Music, and couldn't be more excited about this conversation.
Thank you so much. My name is Chantel George. I'm the CEO and founder of Citizen Sales and co-founder of Handshake and Code. And my background is in sales. So I wanted to ensure that salespeople that look like me had a place to convene and gather. And we just came off of our summit a couple days ago. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to talking more about our community.
Thank you. So listen, the first question that I have is about the role that media plays in shaping the perception. And I really would love this to be a conversation. So I'm going to open it up for everybody, just add your input. But how does the media influence how communities are seen and how communities see themselves?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'll just jump in here really quickly. I think that we have to look at the fact that media is essentially the gatekeepers. It's the gatekeepers. The algorithm shapes culture. For me, I'm a product of Claire Huxtable. I'm a product of, I would probably say even Olivia Pope. I would say, do you remember Jacqueline Boyer from Boomerang? She worked in advertising. These are characters that I saw on the big screen that influenced me to take on the career that I'm in today. So I think we have to look at the fact that not only media is a amplification of culture and what's shown, but it also, the algorithm shapes culture and shapes how we view ourselves.
She brought up Boomerang. I used to want to be Marcus from Boomerang. That was like, yo, that's my man right there.
Yeah, no, I'll just add to that. If you think about all of us in our day-to-day lives, the average person is spending over 2 hours a day on social media. the average person is spending close to 40 hours a week watching TV or a streaming show or something to that effect. So we are all spending a good portion of our lives consuming media, right? And so when you think of it from the consumer perspective, yes, media outlets, media platforms do have huge influence over how we view the world. And so to your point, right, like if we are not seeing ourselves in a positive light, that impacts us, right? Not only us, but any community, right? It's where we see ourselves at.
And I would chime in on that as someone who has been a product of what you mentioned, all of these amazing powerhouse women. I felt like our community of business women were not actually communicated enough in the media. So as a creator, I created a space, and there's also something interesting there. So there could be patterns of the same archetypes, and then it's up to you all to decide that you want to break that chain of repetitive content.
I mean, we're sitting here at Outfront Media. I had to take the shuttle train to Grand Central, and I saw all of the media that was, surrounding the platform station. We are what we see, not just what we eat. We are what we see in the context of this conversation. Media is a mirror. It's like a speakerphone, if you will, or a boombox. I grew up in the 80s, so I'm showing my age a bit there. It's a boombox. And the more they repeat what we see, the more we feel like that is who we are. So to really boil it down to that essence, if we don't see what, ourselves in the media, then we really don't exist, right?
Yeah. I think, that's a really interesting point, because the other part of this is, as you all kind of talked about it, said how media makes us feel about ourselves. But one of the things, I lived in Wisconsin for a couple years, and one of the things when I lived out there, it was kind of shocking to run into people who never met a black person in their life. And I could have conversations about that another time. But what I thought was interesting, though, was then how do they know about black culture? Their perceptions of about black culture is based then on what? Media, right? And so a question for you all is, do we think, when we think about media, do we think that brands are leveraging media to elevate voices or to reinforce stereotypes, whether they do it deliberately or not?
Both. There are plenty of examples out there, I think, of brands who elevate voices, right? One that comes to the top of mind for me is Nike. Nike always has great campaigns that touch on social impact and has, a number of influencers in their commercials, right? And then the other side, we could ramble off any brand that's made a mistake over the last, 10 years, and it all goes back to portraying stereotypes.
Yeah, I would agree, definitely both. But at the end of the day, money talks, right? So these are businesses, and wherever the communities are that are spending money, that's where they're going to make the investment. Whether it is altruistic or has some type of favorable socioeconomic impact, is hit or miss. But at the end of the day, it's about the P&L, the bottom line, and does the community invest in the stories that we're putting out there?
Well, I'd also say, even if the communities are not revenue generating, they are still trend setting, and brands are looking for trends because they are always consistently looking for the next big thing. So they're also there's a voyeuristic element around us as culture makers that brands are seeking for and pulling ideas out of as they're thinking about product launches and their next big thing.
I agree, but that next big thing ultimately leads to what?
Money.
Money.
But even the communities that are not rich are still trendsetters. That's my point. They're not getting a piece of the money, they're not getting a piece of the pie, but they're doing things off the cuff, and those are important insights for marketers.
So, what I wonder, many of you work or have worked in really large corporations. And one of the things I recognize is working in a large corporation, I can have my own perception, even as a vice president, of what needs to happen. But then there's shareholders, there's CEOs, there's consumers, there's others that don't necessarily fit into the group I want to sell to. How do you influence your organization to change how they might talk in media, or to create the right perception, or the perceptions align with your values in media?
I think that starts from the top. I think if you have a diverse community, diverse customers, I think that your boardroom needs to look diverse.
But does it always?
It never does. It never does. And that's something that I think we need to hold corporations accountable to. Like, if your boardroom does not look like the customer base that you serve, then we need to do something about that. And to Reverend Al Sharpton's point earlier, we need to hold corporations accountable.
I'll go back to something you said a few minutes ago. It comes down to the bottom line, right? That's if you can show how you move the business forward, that always gets people attention.
One of the things I always heard was, when we're talking about marketing, we're talking about media right now, right? And using media to be able to represent us in a certain ways. But I looked at it and said, it's good business, not goodwill, when we're trying to talk to the community. And I think a lot of challenges come when we are internal in our communities or in our organizations trying to sell, of being able to say, this is not just because I want to do good, this is actually how we're going to do better. This is how we're going to connect the dots to revenue. Have you had any of those kinds of conversations that have actually shifted the way that things have worked, whether there's the media that you put out, content you put out, influencers you connect with? How have you been able to connect that to the bottom line?
I would say with a great question, Salim. I think when you have data, hard data, and you can paint the picture of what the outcome is going to be, with metrics that really matter, business metrics that matter, it doesn't matter what business or category that you're in, whatever really moves the needle for the business, when you can connect those dots, either through micro experiments, small campaigns that are digital only, that allow you to make bigger swings down the road, then you're moving the needle. And you are opening up the aperture for innovation, for greater diversity in the content, in the product, in the boardroom, in the decision-making room, if you will. That's been my experience.
I can add to that. A few years back when I worked at a different company that I'm at now, one of the things that we looked at was we saw that from a social media perspective, Black social media influencers were not getting the same opportunities as their non-Black counterparts. And so we worked with Nielsen to create what we call the Black Creator Report, which essentially looked at Black creators across multiple platforms, comparing them to non-Black creators. And we were able to see that in certain categories, Black creators were driving as much as 10x higher media value than non-Black creators. And we were able to publish that report, get some good press around it, and it actually moved the needles with some agency and brand partners to invest more with Black creators.
That's dope. That's dope. So we're talking about testing, right? We're talking about if you don't have the full influence, you can take a small step, right? And we're talking about action, right? So things we could do within our organizations or things we can do ourselves. So other question on that same point is, when we talk about doing this, we want to do it in a way that's authentic. When we think about building equity into brand DNA, what companies are leading the way in embedding equity into not just their media, but into their operations, how they operate as a company?
I would just jump in here, and is everyone familiar with the brand Sephora? Okay, so Sephora has a 15% plan where they are basically giving opportunities to Black brands. And since they have a Black woman in charge, it's now 80 more Black brands on store shelves. And it's really showing the fact that not only when you give opportunity to Black business owners and Black brands, it shows up in sales. And I think looking at how we can include more DEI into building wealth for Black brands, it shows for itself. The receipts don't lie. So I think that's one of the brands that I would probably say as an example that's doing a great job of incorporating that into their sales strategy.
That's great. What about have you seen through other organizations you might have worked with or sold to? What's working?
I mean, ultimately, I feel like every sponsor that's showed up for Sisters in Sales has poured into our sales community and wanted more women of color to be on the front business lines. So that's Netflix, that's Walmart Connect, that's GitLab, that's Nielsen, as you mentioned, and the list goes on. I feel I have a different perspective as someone who is creating pathways through what feels like can be immense challenges. And so I'm meeting those conversations head on with brands and directly asking how we can partner together to increase the amount of equity and opportunities for women of color. But I loved your example. It's a strong example, and I think that, and Nike, like, these are great brands that are doing great things. And as someone who's on the opposite side of this, I'm looking at the pledges and I'm also looking at the action. So wherever you see brands supporting communities, know that that's the real deal.
So how can brands build long-term trust rather than just short-term optics, right? It's like we saw that in 2020 when George Floyd. It was like, to me, I've got all these I don't know if you guys got the same kind of phone calls, random phone calls of people you hadn't talked to in years, like, oh my God, I know it's like this. And it was like, wow, this is crazy. And then all these brands were like, oh my God, let's put money here, let's do this, let's do that. And everybody's like, oh my God, this is great. And to me, I'm like, cool, rush it as you can, because 3-4 years from now, it's gonna change. And like clockwork, things change, right? And so, but you could kind of see that. Like, I don't know, like in the examples, how do you know if it's just like performative or if it's like authentic?
I mean, the money talks, right?
Yeah, I mean, the money definitely talks. I like the point that you made just a minute ago about investing in community, right? I think that's where you can see it, because if it's just performative, it's going to be sort of like high level, I'm writing a check, I'm changing my logo's colors depending on the month, those types of things, right? But if it's real, you see it in the communities. Yeah.
I think talking about performative allyship and actually looking at who stayed around, like who stayed around investing in our communities. We can always talk about Target, right? I mean, the fact that they rolled back their DEI initiatives and it has affected their business by $12.4 billion with a B. That is huge. And the fact that we still, to Reverend Al Sharpton's point, we still haven't gotten a resolve from that. But I think if you look at what we're doing now and what we're continuing to do, I think a lot of these businesses, you can even look at, for example, Jimmy Kimmel's show, and how Disney pulled the show from ABC for a while, and how communities jumped into action by canceling their subscriptions. So I think now a lot of brands, a lot of networks, they're really looking at the fact that the community will speak and they will take action. So we're no longer accepting performative allyship. Either you're with us or you're not.
And taking action with their dollars.
Absolutely.
Which is where it hurts and what really drives, what catalyzes these changes, right? Because there's a bit of flip the switch, let's go, let's put them back on.
I mean, it is kind of like that. It's like, they're upset. Oh, let's put them in an ad, right? It's like, okay, let's take the ad down, right? It's like they're not upset anymore. And then it kind of breaks. It's like, oh, well, they're not really taking any money away, so like, let's just keep going.
The irony is that we're using social media to convene.
Yeah.
And that's where our impact is magnifying. Mm-hmm. So through the hashtags, through the trends, all of those vehicles are allowing us to be swift with our responses too, as from a community lens, whether it's positive or negative.
And that's an interesting point, because we started this conversation talking about the power and the influence that media has on the consumer, but the consumer can also use these same media channels to influence the brands.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So
Having worked on, I'm sorry, I was just going to tag on to what he was just talking about. Having worked on the corporate side and the nonprofit side, where the nonprofit side, where funding comes from government entities, politics is kind of like at the top of that pyramid, right? And we saw the socioeconomic sort of landscape make a seismic shift with the transition of the new administration, and that trickles down to policies with DEI pulling back. And so I think, unfortunately, or depending on how you look at it, politics is at the top of that pyramid. So it's extremely hard to make long-term decisions. You started the conversation around performative versus long-term investments in brand. It becomes increasingly challenging for brands to make long-term bets when the landscape changes so much. But they have to be clear, like in the case of Nike, with their conviction, who they stand for, very clear manifest of what the brand means and the value that it brings to its customers. That's their North Star. So if all brands had that North Star, it would be easier to navigate these sort of like changing winds, if you will.
Well, have that North Star and actually stick with it with some.
That's right. That's right.
Keep marching towards it. Listen, I know we have just a few minutes left, so I want to give a chance for anybody in the audience that has any questions. Love to open it up. Questions? Yes.
Okay, hi, good afternoon again. Again, another amazing panel. You guys are dropping gems. Question and comment. Ami Coles. Does anybody know the name Ami Coles? She's a black makeup artist, designer. On July, she announced that her brand is going out of business. I was heartbroken. I said, oh my God, like what's happening? And I go to Sephora and they're saying, yeah, her stuff is selling out, so get what you can. And I brought several lipsticks from different Sephoras. I want to support her. I don't know what happened, but I said, why is her brand going out of business? And I said to my husband, where's the community? Is anybody like coming to her, coming to the space to help her and find out why she's closing her business? Meantime, Louis Vuitton is announcing the $160 lipstick. Wow. I mean, and it's being headed up by Pat McGrath. Again, another extraordinary makeup artist of color. And I support all of them. But how can one, feast and then the other one is famine? This is a problem. And it's not just Ami Cole. So many businesses of color are struggling. And when they go dark, where's the community? Where are the other forces? I'd just like for you to speak to that. And thank you for your time, and I appreciate what you've done today. Thank you.
Sure. I think when you look at brands, when they start, they have to have a community, right? You have to be able to build a community of consumers that's going to support your brand, that's going to buy from you. I'm not familiar with that brand's particular community, nor am I familiar with why she's closing down shop. It could be a myriad of reasons why, but I do think that if that was the choice that she decided to make, she may even reappear and may even reimagine the brand as something else. But I do think it's important as a community that we support our own, that we amplify our own, because at the end of the day, again, we are all that we got.
I'm just going to add to that. I think one of the things that Reverend Sharpton had mentioned, we were talking about ownership, and I think this even came up earlier on. And one thing I do know about specifically the hair, beauty, and personal care products, black consumers, we make up 85% of sales of ethnic hair care, multicultural products, yet we own 7% of the stores that sell them. And when we think about the decisions that made, I used to work on the side of like CPG companies, so the decisions that are made to accept or to not accept certain brands onto the shelf, it might not even have been just her ability to drive sales. She might have been driving perfect sales, but then here you got another big company that comes in that says, I'll give you double what she's giving you in sales. $2 million a year is $4 million. I'll pay you $4 million. Give me 6 months and I'll put something better on the shelf. Usually it's never better, but money talks. And so this retailer is like, oh, well, I got now $2 million extra incremental income and I can fill something in the space. She'll be okay. And that usually is what happens to a lot of our owners of brands, right? Is that we lose out because we don't have ownership to be able to actually push them to keep our products on the shelf.
I just want to say thank you for your comment and question. And now I'm aware of that. And I think you're lifting the community. I think we just have to be louder about these things, right? And hopefully that will, again, create change. But again, as she stated, it could be any number of different reasons. Lack of distribution, I think, is what Salim is alluding to. Because, I mean, access, right? Access is everything. And being on the shelf, whether physically or virtually, which Amazon kind of owns, right? But thank you nonetheless for lifting that story.
Think, well,
I looked into the interview, and she actually was over-distributed. So she was in 450 corridors, and the community knew about her, but she was growing at a pace that her community wasn't able to keep up.
Okay, so you're uncovering yet another nuance that perhaps she was saturating the market with her product. And so it sits there, and maybe that has an adverse impact on her retail partners.
Yeah, because the investors pushed for more doors, and her community wasn't necessarily ready. But she does have a strong community, and that's why the products are sold out now.
I think we got time for one more question.
Hey everyone, my name is Yoli Leah. I'm the co-founder of the Food and Wellness Equity Collective, which is a community of over 400 content creators in the food and wellness space. And one thing I do see is a lot of underrepresented content creators get tapped during cultural moments and shifts in Black History Month and Latin American Month, and not sustain partnerships. So what do you think needs to shift in the industry around media and content creators to see equity be a long-term partnership, that equity is actually in place all the time and not just when February comes around?
I can talk to this. So ultimately, not every partner is going to be the right partner. In fact, most of them won't be the right partners for your community. But there are a few that will be loyal partners to you, and we have to provide amazing service to them and vice versa, and really wrap our arms around them and the other way around. For example, Ben & Jerry's, right? They've had a long-standing history of being progressive and on the front lines, and a lot of what they say I personally agree with. So one Ben & Jerry's is better than trying to get 10 XYZs, you know what I'm saying? So you have to find the brands that align with you and really meet them where they're at and develop strong relationships and strong partnerships. There may only be a few of those, and that is okay.
I think leaning to your point earlier about the Nielsen, was it the Black Creator? I think having a deck that illustrates the numbers and the power behind Black creators and what we provide and what we're able to offer and deliver. I think at the end of the day, a lot of these brands are more focused on what their ROI is going to be. And I think if we do a better job sharing that story with case studies, I think that would help grow the equity that we have with these partnerships overall.
Thank you.
I think if I could just add one more thing to this. One thing that we didn't really touch on today here when it comes to media's influence and power is ownership, right? And there is a big lack of Black ownership of large media platforms. And the way I always think about it is when we think about our own story, right? No community that, like, people outside of our community cannot do a better job of telling our story than we can, right? And that goes for every community. Every community does the best job of telling their own story. And I think that, I don't have the answer to it, but I think that that's a big thing that is missing from the Black community in terms of owning our own narrative, is ownership of big media platforms.
100%, 100%. Well, listen, I think that you all have dropped some amazing gems, as we've heard. I've actually been taking some mental notes myself. But I really appreciate it. I think we should give a round of applause to our panel here, and we thank our panel for coming out.